used tactic. He turned every complaint I had about the church into a personal attack against him. If I said the institution was patriarchal, he thought I was saying he was power-hungry. If I said that the leadership didn't listen to concerns about women, it was me implying that he was selfish and insensitive. It shouldn't have surprised me, given that the Mormon Church, or rather, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, worked very hard to make its members feel that everything in their lives revolved around the institution itself. Work, home, social activities, everything should be church-related. I tried again. I have changed. I'll admit that. I understand that it's difficult for you to figure out what you're supposed to do in response. But I'm not asking you to give up the church. I'm just asking for you to stretch yourself to see things in a more nuanced way, not just in black and white. I'd talked to Gwen Ferris, a former member of our ward and a dear friend, about the problems in my marriage a little bit over the last few months, but I'd eventually stopped because it was clear she thought the only solution was divorce, which was where she and Brad had ended up. She claimed that there was no such thing as a mixed-faith marriage, just two people who hadn't admitted yet that their marriage was over, or ones who were waiting for their partner to finally come around to their way of thinking. "That's a lie," Kurt said, his face red. "You're asking me to give up God entirely, to accept your view of Mormonism as a fiction written and perpetuated by Joseph Smith, a man I revere next to Jesus in the work he did to save humanity. He gave his life as a martyr, and you think of him as little more than a con man out for financial gain and sexual excitement with women other than his wife." He was never like this when we were at home. It was so strange to see this change in personality. I'd have said before we started therapy that he was the gentlest, most even-tempered person you'd ever meet. I hadn't realized the extent of the anger toward me that he'd been swallowing day after day. Now it was all coming out. It was true that I had mixed feelings about Joseph Smith as a prophet. I did believe he'd been inspired by God in many ways, but that polygamy had been nothing more than his own sexual appetite, excused by his supposed revelations. That mistake had not only indirectly led to his assassination, but continued to cost the church dearly over the next century and was still causing damage to the women and men who had been born into fundamentalist branches and might never find their way out. But I thought this was a topic we'd already discussed and agreed to disagree over. Kurt had known when we'd first gotten married that I wasn't your typical Mormon woman. Even if I'd chosen to stay at home with our kids, I'd always had feminist views. It felt to me like he was the one rewriting history in his victim narrative. "That's not what I'm asking at all," I insisted. "I'm asking you to accept that other people might see Joseph Smith that way and still find power and truth in parts of Mormonism. Me, for instance." Dr. Z opened her mouth to say something, but Kurt cut her off. He'd insisted that he wanted to talk to a female therapist, and I thought it was partly because he found women less intimidating and less judgmental, but also, frankly, because he thought emotions and feelings were women's work, not men's. I don't think he could have respected a male therapist, though of course he would dismiss this as ridiculous if I said it aloud. "Power and truth? You're talking about my religion like it's just some book you picked up and are considering for an award. Either the church is God's one true religion on earth, or it isn't. Either Christ came and atoned for our sins and was resurrected so that we will all be redeemed, or he wasn't. Either the temple seals families together forever in a real heaven that we will go to, or it has no power at all and is a fraud," he said, then stopped. He was breathing heavily. Sweat started to drip down his face. I wasn't the one who'd set up these dichotomies, but I'd certainly heard church leaders frame things this way. It made it easier for them to convince people that any doubts were sins in order to keep them fully invested, until it stopped working, like it had for me. "Linda, would you like to respond?" Dr. Z asked. On the contrary, I'd like to go home, make a half-dozen pies and maybe some Christmas candies, and eat them all by myself. But that probably wouldn't save my marriage. I don't see the world in those absolutes, Kurt.